This is the story of one man in Hollywood whose entire job was to make sure negative press about Meghan Markle never reached publication. And the moment he walked away, every story that had been held back came flooding out at once. That is not a theory. That is a documented sequence of events with dates that line up in a way that is almost impossible to explain as coincidence. We're going to walk through it in order. Every departure, every contract that quietly expired, every accusation, and we are going to identify the one variable that is present every single time. Before we get into the pattern, we need to establish the source, because in March 2026, investigative royal biographer Tom Bower published a book called Betrayal, Power, Deceit, and the Fight for the Future of the Royal Family. And the reason this matters is that Tom Bower is not a tabloid columnist recycling palace whispers. This is the man who exposed Robert Maxwell as a pension fraudster. He dismantled Gordon Brown's political mythology while Brown was still in office. He took on Richard Branson's entire carefully constructed public persona with documented sources and won. His 2022 book on the royals was built from 80 separate sources. His standard, stated by Bower himself, is direct. He has very good lawyers, and he makes sure what he writes is the truth. So when his 2026 follow-up landed with claims so specific and so commercially damaging that the Sussex team felt compelled to issue a formal public statement, the response from their camp was to call it deranged conspiracy. Let's sit with that for a moment. When someone publishes sourced, documented facts, and the official response is to call it deranged conspiracy, that is not a denial. A real denial says the date is wrong or the document does not exist. Their statement said Bower had never met them, which is true of almost every investigative biographer who has ever published anything credible. Bower never met Robert Maxwell either. That did not make the pension fraud any less real. So what is actually in this book that worried them enough to respond publicly? We are about to find out. Revelation 1. The Invisible Shield. In April 2023, Meghan Markle signed with William Morris Endeavor, WME, the most powerful talent agency in Hollywood. This is Ari Emanuel's agency. The man who represents Mark Wahlberg, Dwayne Johnson, and this detail matters enormously, Oprah Winfrey. But according to industry insiders, this was not standard talent representation. WME's primary function for Meghan was acting as what sources describe as a press suppression shield. When you have Ari Emanuel in your corner, negative stories do not get published. Publications think twice. Editors make phone calls they would not otherwise make. Shield was the point. Here is what happened next. Around Thanksgiving 2023, Meghan allegedly threw what was described internally as a hissy fit over a perceived lack of attention from the agency during the holiday period. She then demanded a meeting in January 2024, reportedly arriving and expecting, and this is a direct quote from sources, decks and plans. Multiple insiders confirmed what came next. Ari Emanuel was done with her. Now here is the important contradiction. WME publicly denied the split. The Sussex camp publicly denied it. Right up until March 2026, both sides were publicly maintaining that the relationship was intact. But here is the number that exposes the entire situation. One Hollywood insider said plainly on Background, "There is no way the Variety piece about her fallout with Netflix would have run if WME was still looking after Meghan." The shield fell in January 2024. The press flood started immediately after. The Netflix tension story in Variety, the collapse of her lifestyle brand, the back-to-back staff resignations. Every single one of those stories ran in the window after protection ended. That is not coincidence. That is a sequence. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Revelation 2. The Beckham operation. David Beckham and Harry first met in 2012. By 2018, the year of the royal wedding, the Beckhams were guests at the ceremony. Victoria Beckham had personally helped decorate Frogmore Cottage. This was a multi-year, genuine, warm friendship. Two of the most recognizable people on the planet in Meghan's corner. Here is what Tom Bower documented. At the 2018 Invictus Games, the same year as the wedding, the same year Victoria was decorating the cottage, Meghan issued a directive. Photographs of Harry with David Beckham were forbidden. David was, by multiple accounts, puzzled. He did not know until later that the exclusion order had come from Meghan herself. Bower's exact framing is precise. She did not want any competition in the media from Beckham, and especially not from his wife Victoria. Think about what that means. She invited them to the wedding. She allowed Victoria to help prepare their home. But the moment David Beckham's face next to Harry's might shift a single camera lens away from Meghan, that was unacceptable. Then came the accusation. accusation. Meghan reportedly told David Beckham, in what sources describe as a tense phone call, that Victoria had been leaking stories about her to the press. David was, according to multiple reports, absolutely furious. Royal expert Kinsey Schofield confirmed the reality. It was actually a salon receptionist with loose lips. Not Victoria. Never Victoria. The accusation was wrong. The friendship was destroyed anyway. And today, David Beckham says publicly about Prince William, "Whenever the Prince of Wales sends me a message and says he needs something, it is always a yes. That is not neutrality." That is a man who has done the math and made a decision about which side of history he wants to be on. Revelation 3. The grifter verdict in 2020. Harry and Meghan signed a deal with Spotify. The reported value was $20 million over 3 years. The promise was a podcast series telling stories through diverse voices and perspectives. What they delivered: 13 episodes, 1 series, and 1 standalone holiday special, then silence. June 2023. The deal ends. The same day, Bill Simmons, head of podcast innovation and monetization at Spotify, the man who sold The Ringer to the company, goes on his own podcast and says this: "Thou and Grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them. I've got to get drunk one night and tell the story of the Zoom I had with Harry to try and help him with a podcast idea. It's one of my best stories. I need you to sit with that." He is not just using a word. He is referencing a specific conversation, a named Zoom call, specific podcast pitch from Harry, a story he considers so revealing, so apparently extraordinary, that he still has not told it publicly, and says he needs to get drunk first before he can. That is not someone who is casually annoyed. That is someone who witnessed something specific and is choosing very deliberately when to use it. Meanwhile, the Netflix structure follows the exact same sequence as Spotify. The reported $100 million deal, a documentary series that performed because, and only because, it attacked the royal family. Follow-up projects that, in the words of industry analysis, generated no major splash. Netflix invests as equity partner in As Ever, Meghan's lifestyle brand, then pulls out. The production deal gets quietly downgraded to a first-look arrangement in summer 2025. The deal expires without renewal in July 2025. 2 seasons of her lifestyle show with no 3rd season announced. No statement, just silence, sign big, deliver less. Exit quietly. Move to the next contract. The math is the same every single time. Revelation 4, the document they buried October 2018. Jason Knopf is Meghan's own communications secretary. Not a journalist, not a critic. The man Harry personally asked to help Meghan write the famous private letter to her estranged father. A trusted insider by every available measure. 2 months after that letter, Knopf sent a formal email to Simon Case, then private secretary to Prince William, copying the palace HR department. Here is what that email says. On the record, in Knopf's own words, "I am very concerned that the Duchess was able to bully 2 PAs out of the household in the past year. The Duchess seems intent on always having someone in her sights. She is bullying a member of staff and seeking to undermine her confidence. We have had report after report from people who have witnessed unacceptable behavior." And then Knopf's final line, the one that deserves your full attention: "I questioned if the household policy on bullying and harassment applies to principals." Read that again carefully. He is not just reporting behavior, he is asking whether the rules even apply to her. That is not a complaint from someone with a grudge. That is a question from someone who already suspects the answer and is putting it in writing anyway, for the record. Now here is Meghan's official response, delivered through a spokesperson in March 2021. 3 years after that document was filed. The Duchess is saddened by this latest attack on her character, particularly as someone who has been the target of bullying herself. A formal HR complaint submitted by her own communications secretary is reframed in the same sentence as an attack on a bullying victim. The story changed, and the findings of Buckingham Palace's internal investigation remain secret to this day, never released to the public. Here is what we do know. Jason Knopf filed the complaint. Harry reportedly begged him not to pursue it. Knopf quit a month later and went directly to work for Prince William. The most trusted insider became the most credible adverse witness. Revelation 5, 43 spectators at the 2025 Invictus Games in Vancouver. Harry's flagship event, the cornerstone of his entire post-royal identity, the charitable enterprise bearing his most personal brand. Tom Bauer reports that a wheelchair basketball match drew 43 paying spectators. 43. Organizers reportedly brought in approximately 100 additional people and positioned them around Harry and Meghan for photographs. This is the man who walked away from a multi-billion-dollar royal institution with centuries of actual infrastructure, staffed embassies, and genuine global reach in order to build an independent empire. And the attendance at his flagship event reportedly required stage management to manufacture the appearance of a crowd. The brand is not just failing. The brand is being kept alive on life support and photographed to look healthy, and this is not an isolated data point. In March 2025, Harry resigned from Centabale, his African charity for children affected by HIV, along with its co-founder, its CEO, and the entire board of trustees. Harry had visited the charity for the first time in 4 years, in October 2024. He reportedly attempted to fire the chair. He failed. He then resigned. 4 years away, one visit, an immediate attempt at control, an immediate failure, and then an exit. The pattern holds. I want to step back from the contracts and the numbers for a moment, because underneath every corporate departure in this story, there is a human story, and it belongs to a woman who has never spoken about it publicly. Her name is Jessica Mulroney. She was Meghan's best friend, not a celebrity alliance, not a strategic network connection, a genuine years-long friendship built in Toronto, long before anyone was watching. Jessica introduced Meghan to social circles in Canada. She helped style Meghan's clothes. She was the person Meghan trusted with the private details of her life that never appeared in any interview. And at Meghan's wedding in May 2018, Jessica's children were the page boys and the bridesmaid. I want you to understand what that means. You do not put someone's children in your wedding party as a networking move. That is the most intimate personal position you can give another human being on the most important day of your life. 2 years later, in June 2020, Jessica Mulroney became embroiled in a social media controversy. She was accused of exhibiting white privilege during a disagreement with a lifestyle influencer. Her television roles were canceled almost immediately. Her public career collapsed. She was living through one of the most painful chapters of her adult life, and Meghan cut ties completely, immediately. The timing is worth noting carefully. June 2020, the Black Lives Matter movement was at its global peak. Meghan was actively positioning herself as a racial justice advocate in America. Her entire brand identity was being rebuilt in real time, and her closest friend had just become a racial controversy. A confidant spoke about what Jessica experienced afterward. She was really put through a difficult time in 2020, has had an emotional experience since then, watching from the sidelines, unable to say anything, because Jessica Mulroney, the woman with years of private conversations, knowledge that was never meant for public consumption, has stayed silent. Sources say Meghan is very aware of that silence. One insider noted that publishers are reportedly offering 7 figures for her memoir. The woman who gave her children to stand beside Meghan at the altar was discarded at the exact moment her presence became a liability. That is not a falling out. That is a transaction. Let us look at the pattern of departures. Because 18 senior staff departures since 2018 is not a human resources issue. That is something professionals in adjacent industries recognize immediately. Chief of Staff Josh Kettler resigned after 3 months in 2024. His stated reason: there were aspects of the job he was not comfortable with. 3 months. Industry standard tenure for that role is 3 to 5 years. Chief Communications Officer Meredith Maines resigned on December 26, 2025. Executive Director James Holt resigned on December 29, 2025, 3 days apart. End of year. The 2 most senior people in their communications and organizational structure walking out simultaneously. Royal photographer Helena Chard put it plainly. Maines is a highly respected communications professional who was without doubt protecting her reputation. A communication strategy only works if all parties adhere to the plan. She is not saying the strategy failed. She is saying the principal was not following it. That the people hired to manage the brand were being overridden by the person whose brand they were managing. That the communications team was losing arguments they should have been winning because someone upstream was making unilateral decisions. And former palace staff coined a term, the Sussex Survivors Club, to describe a form of post-traumatic stress they reported experiencing after working for the couple. They said it half-jokingly. Half. Here is the verdict that the evidence supports. Every single person who has entered Meghan's orbit as an enthusiastic supporter has eventually exited after proximity revealed something they could not publicly describe. The Beckhams, Oprah, Suits cast members. Gina Torres said publicly and plainly, "We do not have her number. We just do not. Not as a complaint, as a fact." Elton John, one of the most loyal people in the British celebrity world, a man who stayed close to Harry out of love for Princess Diana, reportedly tries to have as little contact with Meghan as possible. Bill Simmons. Ari Emanuel. The Netflix content team. Spotify. 19 members of staff and counting, one anonymous source. Someone described as having a front row seat to the entire 8-year arc. Put it in a single sentence. The people who have stayed most loyal to them are beneath them and get something out of it. Everyone else they fall out with. And then there is Harry, the man who left a centuries-old institution, who wrote a memoir attacking his own family's private grief, who now shows up to polo matches alone, book launches alone, charity events where 43 people paid to attend and 100 more were reportedly brought in to fill the photograph. Based on every document we have reviewed, the HR complaint he reportedly begged his own secretary not to file, the Beckham friendship he apparently did not know was being managed, the Netflix deal that was collapsing while the public statement said otherwise. Harry may be the last person in this story to fully understand what has been happening around him. There is one thread that has not yet been pulled fully into the light. Bill Simmons, the man who called them grifters on the record at Volume, said he has a specific story from a specific Zoom call with a specific pitch from Harry that he considers one of his best stories. He said he needs to get drunk first before he tells it. That story exists. It is sitting somewhere waiting. I have gone through every document, every departure, every denial, every accusation, every contract that expired without a public announcement. And I believe that Zoom call, whatever Harry said on it, whatever he pitched, whatever it revealed about how they actually believe their operation works, is the one piece of evidence that ties the entire pattern together. So I will leave you with the one question this entire forensic record cannot yet answer. What did Harry say on that call?